Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be having a very interesting conversation with Bob Rathbun. Bob, as an eight-time Sportscaster of the Year in Virginia and Georgia, he has nine Emmy awards to his name. He's the TV voice of the Atlanta Hawks and professional motivational speaker. He's also the author of Fast Forward Winner. Bob teaches the lessons of competition and success gleaned from the broadcast booth. His audience is informed and inspired with stories of leadership, personal growth, teamwork from one of America's top play by play television broadcasters. From students to large corporations, Bob reaches both hearts and heads with high energy, high content presentation. He's an expert in media, television, radio, college sports, professional sports, leadership, team building, personal growth. Bob is also the longest tenured TV play by play man in the franchise's history. He has earned a variety of significant broadcasting awards and 10 Southeast Regional Emmy Awards. In 2012, he earned Georgia Sportscaster of the Year honors from the National Sportscasters and Sports Writers Association, NSSA. More recently, he received the Positivity in Broadcasting Award in June 2017 from Positive Athlete Georgia. He's currently partnered with Dominic Wilkins, a nine-time NBA All-Star and player for the Hawks. In addition, Bob also serves as play-by-play announcer for Southeastern Conference football games on FSN South and Atlantic Coast Conference, college basketball games for Raycom Sports. His basketball experience includes play-by-play gigs with Tidewater Tides and Richmond Braves. His Fast Forward Winner program and podcast are designed to help people achieve personal and professional success, live their best life, and take them on a journey from start to finish on accomplishing their dreams, be they large or small. Welcome, Bob. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm honored. You have done so well. So let me get started with that. Getting to know you a little bit. You've had such a tremendous career and a very long career. How did you get started in this arena?
Well, it was good fortune smiled on me when I was very young. I was 12 years old, growing up in a small town in North Carolina, and was always interested in radio and sports. Listened intently as far back as I can remember. Mm-hmm. And one day decided to call the radio station and tell the announcer on duty just how much I enjoyed the station and the sports. And he said, well, come on down. We'll give you a tour. And that began for me an every Sunday ritual where I hung out at the radio station.
Oh, wow.
And not long after that, the sportscaster of the station showed up, and he said, well, if you love sports and love radio, help us broadcast these baseball games. And so I would help keep stats. I was a 12-year-old kid. And one game I got to broadcast a half an inning, the bottom of the seventh inning of a game. And that's what started it for me.
At 12 years old?
When I was 12, yeah, I got to do that, a half an inning of a game. And and that's what started it. And I've been with it really ever since. I wasn't back on the air, of course, for a long time, but I worked at the station from the time I was 16 and had my driver's license. I was out covering games for the radio station and the newspaper. And by the time I was a sophomore in college, the sports guy left. And they asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, of course. And so I worked full time. I went to school full time. And that's how I got started. Very atypical from a lot of people, but very grateful.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, I have to ask, you have been doing this for a number of sports, like you said, baseball and NBA and all that. So how much of an expert do you have to be in a particular sport to be that good as you are? I mean, you can broadcast and you can do play-by-play for many sports, seems like.
Yeah, when you're just starting off, I think, and you're starting off small, you're not specialized. So you become a jack of all trades. You learn how to do football, basketball, baseball, hockey, maybe, softball. I mean, anything that they throw your way, because you just want to get experience in doing it. And a lot of times when you're at a small market station, maybe just a town with just one radio station.
Yeah.
They cover everything that goes on in the town. So you've got to do a little bit of everything. So I think that's a big reason why I got to do so many sports, is because I did them all at a very young age, and they all take a little bit different discipline. You get more specialized, I think, as you get older. You might find that you're better at one sport than another, and that might lead you one way or the other. But I think starting off, you tend to do them all, and that gives you a chance to do them all later on when more opportunities come your way.
Yeah. So, do you also play these sports? Like, I'm sure there are some technical things that you got to know, and you have to understand the game at a deeper level to be able to comment on that. So, how do you prepare yourself? Like, do you indulge in playing these sports and getting that first-hand experience?
I think for the play-by-play announcer, playing the sport is not necessary. My athletic career peaked when I was 12 in Little League baseball, but I've been doing this ever since. Now, if you're an analyst, I think that's a different story. I think the playing of the game or the coaching of the game will lead you to better expertise than having never played it. You don't have to have played to be an analyst, but that's sort of the way the business has gone over the last 20 years or so. But to do play-by-play, it's not necessary that you have done the game, but it is important that you know what you're talking about. So I think you have to work to build up your basis of knowledge about how the game is played, because if you don't know that, then I think your audience will know right away that this guy really doesn't know what he's talking about. The expressions that you use, the strategy involved, the rules of the game. If you don't know that, then I think they'll find out pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you have such a deep voice, such a, a very attractive voice, but you started at 12. So how did you train yourself? Like, did you do anything special to maintain that voice or develop that voice? Even when you're sort of when you're young, like the voice is like really childlike. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I thank you for the compliment. I always chuckle when I'm asked to tell this story, because when I did that half an inning of a game at age 12, our news director at the radio station called around to the local police department, and the female police dispatcher who gave him the information about wrecks and stuff that happened overnight. She said, "Warner, did you listen to the Legion game on radio last night?" And Warner said, "Yes, I did." "Well, who was that little girl Marty had on broadcasting the game?" So I've always been a little self-conscious about my voice, and it really wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I felt confident with the speaking voice. And one of the great things that happened to me is I went to college in my hometown, Catawba College, and I was a speech major. And the head of the department, Dr. Carl Hales, was kind enough to kind of take me under his wing. He said, "We don't get many guys like you. You know what you want to do. So let's just cut to the chase and get you on track to do the things that you need to do to be a professional broadcaster." And working on speech and voice and diction and all those things were part of my college experience, which I think when you really consider what college should be, that's kind of it, right?
Absolutely.
You pick a profession and then you structure your education around that. So many people declare a major and work and then try to find a job in it. I was the other way. I knew what I wanted to do, so I had the educational background to do that. And Catawba was great to me because I did a lot of things that I was already doing professionally. I got course credit for it. I see. I would go broadcast a high school football game and record it, and then Carl would listen back to it, and that was an independent study for me. And we'd listen to it, and he'd say, "That stunk. That wasn't very good. That was pretty good. You're getting better there." And then I would go back out the next Friday night and do it again. Now, I would do the game anyway because that was my job. But it was also a college course for me. So that, I think, really ramped up my ability to do this well back then. and you want to keep getting better the longer you stay in it. But that really was very helpful to me.
Wow. Okay. Now, another question here is that, obviously, as you learn these things, you have to take a lot of negative feedback. As you pointed out, somebody commented on your girly voice, or somebody said it's not good. A lot of people fold under that criticism. They basically, retrieve into a shell and say, oh, this is not for me, I can't do it. How did you maintain your confidence? How did you find that courage to keep going in face of that kind of criticism?
Oh, great question. I think the big thing was, I was in my hometown, so I was accepted right from the start.
I see.
So I didn't have to worry about, losing my job because of my voice, and everybody knew me and I knew everybody. So, I mean, we're talking about a little teeny tiny town. So I had that advantage. But I think the big thing is, for a young broadcaster just starting off and you're getting criticism about your voice, well, there are things that you can do. See, I knew that I had to improve. So I became a speech major. And Carl, would tell me what I needed to do. And I could hear it in the tapes. He would point out, he said, well, your pitch was too high and there was no resonance here. And you spoke too quickly here, paint a better word picture there. So I got all that, and once you're out of school, whether it's high school or college, and you decide you want to do this, then that's stuff you got to pay for. But I did it as an undergraduate. I mean, I still had to pay for it, my college expenses, but still, it was very valuable training. And so that kind of shifted me onto the track of blowing through any thing in my mind that I couldn't do it.
I see.
It never occurred to me that I wouldn't do this for a living. So when you got that lack of doubt toward any endeavor, I think that's a major plus for you, because you're just not going to give up at the first time somebody says, you stink. So that would be my takeaway on that I was doing it. I was trying to overcome. And then, a lot of times in life, the barriers that we construct for ourselves stop us much more than any criticism from the outside.
For sure.
And once I got my first big job, when I left my hometown, I went to work in Norfolk, Virginia. And my first year away, I recorded a football game that I did so I could listen back to it. And I listened to it. I got home. It was a Saturday night, and I listened to it, and I said, that's not bad. That's not bad. And so I kind of knew right then that I was sort of on the track, but I was still intimidated by the great voices. We were in a radio station and a TV station in the same building in Norfolk, Virginia. And I was working with, really, really talented guys. And so there was a little intimidation factor. But, you stick with it, you hang in there, and you keep doing it over and over and over. And I was lucky that I had a voice that wasn't, that didn't turn people off. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. My voice is much better now after doing it for 40 years. But back then, I was just so happy to be in that building with those people, men and women, that were just great broadcasters. And they were mentors to me as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that. But I think one deep point that you touched upon was that there was no doubt in your mind.
I know, and I don't know where that came from. A couple of things happened. One, I was in that little radio station, which was a great little radio station. We turned out 4 major league announcers out of this little tiny station. One's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Another guy does NASCAR racing and has for, 40 years. Another guy passed away now, but he did major college basketball and baseball and all this stuff. And all of us were there at the same time. I was a kid. The other 2 announcers were just starting really in their careers. But there's something else happened in the town that helped banish the doubt. And that was as you mentioned in the introduction, the National Sportscasters and Sports Writers Association was headquartered in my hometown.
Oh, wow.
So when I was 16, and they had an annual award ceremony where they brought in all the state winners and the national winners. So when I was 16, I was, quote unquote, put on the transportation committee, which was nothing more than take the rental car and go to Charlotte Airport, pick these guys up and bring them back to Salisbury, about a 45-minute drive. But in the back seat of my car, I had the greats, the legends of the industry. And they were, normal guys, and ladies. And they were so helpful, so encouraging. That helped banish the doubt. Like, they made it. Why can't I?
Yeah.
So I've never really had that, this is unattainable, or they're so good and I'm not. And I never had that. They felt like they were bringing me into the club. And I was serving an apprenticeship, but I would just naturally be the next guy. So I think that was a big part of it. I know that is so atypical, and it's not the normal.
Unbelievable, churning out four people like that.
So I'll be forever grateful for that, and I try to return that. I try to pay it forward. I talk to all kinds of young broadcasters and give them the encouragement that I got when I was their age to do this.
Amazing. Yeah. And you rightly observed that a lot of people put the limits on their own self, given the circumstances. So that's great. Now, having voices is great, but doing this for as long as you have done and such an amazing job and so much success, how do you connect with the audience? Like, how do you actually get into their hearts and minds and sort of inspire them with your commentary, with how you describe what is happening live?
Well, I think if there's one advantage we have in sports is that the people that we're broadcasting to are fans. And when you do a team's games rather than just sort of a national game, they care passionately about your team. And if you're their announcer, well, you're their guy. And they're relying on you to tell them about their favorite team. So there's just a connection that you automatically have. Now, if I was doing a national game, and I just parachuted in, I would not be a fan of your team. I would just be there to call the game. So you don't have that connection with the audience like you would normally have. I think one of the big things is to realize that you are that conduit. The fans watching want to be where you are. They want to be sitting at the game, on the court. They want to travel with the team. They want to be in the locker room. They want to get to know the guys, all of that. And they'll never do that. 99% of the audience will never have that opportunity. So I'm sort of their guy, I want to go into the locker room and talk to our players and our coaches and tell their stories and give the fans the things that they want to hear. And I think that builds that heart connection. It's a very emotional connection. You live and die with the wins and losses, as any fan would do. And it just cements that relationship that you have with the fans, because this is my 25th year doing the Hawks. So I've got people now that are second generation that have been listening to me since they were 5 years old, and now they're grown adults and they've got their own kids. So there's a lot of people in my audience that have never heard a Hawks game broadcast by anybody else but me. So, it's a big responsibility, but also makes it a lot of fun too.
For sure. Now, that's really interesting how you projected it and how you sort of take it upon yourself to let the audience live vicariously through you, and sort of get that behind the scenes experience. But when you started, radio is a one-way communication. So how did you get that feedback? I mean, these days it's easier, like, you can get that feedback through the internet, through the emails and things like that. But I'm sure that was not the case when you started. Like, can can you describe to me how did you figure out what is working, what people like, and without that constant feedback coming from the audience?
Yeah. Well, back then, and I believe it was a blessing, there was no internet. There was no social media. Thank God. And because starting off, what you would have to do is just record your games and let somebody listen to it. So they'd have to take the time to critique, what you did. It's so different today than it was back then. So you really had to make an effort, and somebody had to really be a caring soul to, give you pretty good feedback on what your broadcast was. You would get also feedback when you applied for other jobs.
I see.
You'd send the program director of the radio station your tape, and there'd be 100 other tapes sitting on the desk. So you're hoping that yours stands out. But that was basically all the feedback that you got, other than your friends, or, if you said something out of line, they're calling the station and complaining. But it's so different today when you got the immediacy of the internet and social media. They'll let you know right away.
Yeah.
And
you'll know right away.
But you gotta treat those imposters both the same. The good and the bad, because neither really should affect you.
For sure.
To be independent of the good opinion of others is quite a task, because it's easy to be independent of the bad opinion of others, but it's not so easy to be independent of the good opinion of others. And that's something you have to work on, because you can get a little carried away when people are, slapping you on the back and telling you how great you are. You're only really as good as your last broadcast in this business, because everything these days is recorded. Everything is readily accessible. You slip up and social media is there to pounce. So you really got to be on your toes. But it is so different today than it was back then. I'm glad I grew up when I did.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, every generation has their own sort of challenges and pros and cons. But yeah, I mean, I find it fascinating because I grew up in the digital age, and as you said, like, you get immediate feedback, whether that's worked or not, and tons of it, and most people on the internet are not very kind. So it's really challenging.
I have a cure for that, I think.
Oh yeah, please do share.
You have to have identification to get an account. You cannot post anything anonymously. I think that would end 95% of this nonsense. When you got to put your name to something, makes it a little different.
That's true.
Now, so there's going to be some that, they're just going to let it rip no matter what. But when you got to put your name on something like that, when you're, just eviscerating someone on Twitter or Instagram or something like that, now I know where you are. I know who you are. Makes a difference.
Well, let's see what happens. I mean, internet is still evolving. I think it's in its infancy. So let's see what happens. Now let's talk about your work behind the scenes, because from a broadcaster, you went into motivational speaking, team building, leadership. How did that come about? I'm sure you obviously gained a lot of wisdom as you described, working with all these great people and yourself getting all that success. But what turned your attention towards, actually doing something about it? Starting the podcast, writing a book, and all these things that you're doing outside of broadcasting.
Two things happened. Number one, I was always a big fan of speakers. I was very much into motivational tapes, back then cassettes, business, some of the master motivators, and I would listen to their tapes and really got hooked on, boy, that really is a great delivery. So I was a big fan of the Jim Rohns and Wayne Dyers and Brian Tracy's and all these greats, the John Maxwell's, et cetera, that would come along. The other thing that happened was, as a sportscaster, I think many of us are asked to MC events, the award ceremony, all that. And I would MC these, and I would hear keynote after keynote after keynote. And I would say, well, that's something I think I'd like to try. So I try to marry the two. And then one day the Hawks had a series of programs that we would stage once every couple of months for our season ticket holders. And one month we brought in the great John Maxwell to speak. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with John, but he is one of the leading writers and speakers in business motivation that there has ever been. I mean, he writes a book every 5 minutes. I mean, the guy is so prolific.
I've heard
and he's so great, and he lives here.
I see.
So he comes in, and I introduce him. Well, that was like, I couldn't hardly get the words out. I was so excited. I mean, I'm introducing somebody that like is a mentor to me, and we'd never met. So the guy who brought him down was a gentleman named Ken Coleman, who organized his Speakers Bureau. And I told him the whole story about my interest in it. And he said, well, let's get together and talk. And that led me to first being the voice of John's monthly mentoring program.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I would introduce him each month on his cassettes and his tapes and stuff. And then he formed a Speakers Bureau where we would take John's teachings and go out into the marketplace. What would happen is the companies would call and they'd ask for John, and John would tell them what he charges. And then they would say, well, do you have anybody else? It's a little cheaper. And that's where I would come in. And there were about 7 of us that would go out and speak when John had a conflict. So we would take his stuff, and you can't see it behind me, but I have the entire John Maxwell collection of all of his books and all of his tapes that I used for reference back then. So that's how I got into the speaking end of it. And then from there, got involved with the National Speakers Association and how to build, because I found out very early that speaking is one thing, the business of speaking is something else. And you've got to know both to get booked and stay booked and what to charge and how that. And then the platform skills is something else that you got to work on. So that's how I got started in the speaking business.
Amazing. And so how does the Fast Forward Winner program work? I am assuming that's part of what you were just talking about. How does that work?
Well, it was the answer to the questions that I would get along the trail. So many times I would be asked at a high school, college job fair, or speaking to the journalism class, or speaking to the broadcasters. And they would say, we want to be just like you. We want to do play-by-play and be on TV and blah, blah, blah. How did you get started? How do you do this and all that? And I said, I need to write something down because I get this question 1 million times. And the Fast Forward Winner was an outgrowth of that.
I see.
And I tried to meet the students halfway. It's basically for young adults, but it really is for anybody transitioning in a job, whether it's a veteran, you name it. It's really for anybody. It's a 6-step process. But basically, it was my story getting started.
Got it.
And what I try to relay and impart on the students is, it's in these 6 steps, there are 3 that are inward and 3 that are outward. The inward ones are the retrospective. You've got to take a look inside your soul and say, what is it I want to do? What am I good at? And what do I think I might get paid for maybe one day? And it could be a hobby. It doesn't have to be a job. And then privately, you put this together. And I emphasize that because the feedback I was getting from so many students and young people was, well, I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to do this, da-dee-da-da. But when I told my family, they shot it down. What? Who are you kidding? You can't sing. You can't do that. I said, well, let me address that. So do those 3 things first, of awareness and what you're good at, and get tested, or take it to someone, whatever, before you tell the world what it is you want to do. But after you tell the world, then you've got to tweak it and adjust and get better. That's the feedback part.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's a 6-step process to come out at the other end with something that is tangible, that you might be able to take to the marketplace, or you might want to do just on the side. If you wanted to be a speaker, if you wanted to be something in the public domain, start privately, take it public, and then work on it. Because
That's
I do believe that all of us have something in us that is going to be our gift to the world. It's up to us to figure out what it is and get it out there.
Yeah.
And there's been no easier time than the present to get that word out there. You can build a platform. All it takes is one of these.
Yeah, exactly.
A microphone, a camera, and a website, and you can say whatever you want, however you want to say it, and put it out into the world. Yeah. So obviously, I'm asked to do that, give advice about that from a lot of people in broadcasting or speaking, what have you. And so the fast forward winner, just to make a very long answer to your question, is just sort of the outgrowth of all the questions that I was asked of how do you do this?
Yeah, no, that's a lot of wisdom right there. And it sounds like it's making a huge impact to people who are following through with that. That's
well, I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you started at a very early age, and it seems like you absolutely loved what you did. Even if you were not getting paid, I'm sure you would have done that. Did you ever strive to rise to this level of success and recognition, or it happened organically because of your love for what you did?
Yeah, I think it happened organically, but again, not to go over plowed ground, but the banishment of the doubt.
Yeah.
It just never entered my mind that I wouldn't do well. I mean, and that kind of sounds a little arrogant to say, but I don't mean it that way. It was just, I was lucky that I was encouraged by so many people that, okay, let me just learn technically how to do this, and then let me try it. I mean, I worked for $5 a game until I was 25 years old. I mean, it's not like it was a get-rich-quick scheme by any means. But you stick with it, and you get a break, and somebody believes in you, and you move up to the next thing. One of the things that happened to me was the timing of cable television. In the late 70s, early 80s, it was just starting to take hold. And that's where regional sports started to boom. And all of a sudden, all these games are on TV, and they needed announcers. So the marketplace, exponentially increased because you just had to have so many people, because these regional networks were programming sports 24 hours a day. When ESPN broke through in 79, everybody was saying, sports on television 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Who's going to watch that?
Yeah.
Well, you see what happened.
Exactly.
And then the outgrowth of the regionals, so your local team, the Hawks, the Braves, and all had their own time on the network. So they needed announcers, and I started getting into TV on that end.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, you did mention that a lot of things are changing, and obviously in the last year we've had a massive change compressed into a few weeks. And you were sort of at the center of this because sports arenas and sports activities have been affected. What do you see as a long-term effect of this event moving forward? How do you see? Are there going to be any just like you were describing 24-hour news channel? Like, do you see like major shifts happening in sports industry due to what's happening?
Yeah, I think too, and we're starting to see them already. I think number one, from the way that we produce the games, technically, the pandemic has sadly driven this in-house. When we go do an NBA road game, we take a producer, director, graphics person with us, but they found out that they can do that job from their home. So I doubt that those folks will ever travel again, at least at our regional level. Okay. The announcers will always travel, I think, at least at the major league level. Now, colleges might be different as a cost-saving measure. That will sure to change. But I think from the NBA standpoint, the announcers will always be on site because it's so difficult for us to call these games off of screen. For sure. The other shift that's happening in our business is streaming. People now consume almost as much television, by watching their iPad or watching Roku or, whatever the case may be, whatever the streaming device is, that is how they're consuming our product. And the days of having a cable as your only outside source for non-broadcast programming is a thing of the past. Now, sports is coming right along with that. And the big boys really don't care whether you stream it or watch it on cable or satellite TV, because the way this thing is working, you've got to have some sort of cable account or you've got to pay for it a la carte. So they're still getting your money. Okay.
Yeah.
You might not paying a cable bill, but you're still paying, when you lump them all together, you're still paying about the same amount of money to get the programming, if you add up all the streaming services.
Yeah.
So that shift has taken place. I see these stories that come out that say, the college basketball or the college football playoff, the viewership was down 40% on cable from the previous year. That may well be true. But what they don't tell you is that more people watch the game because they're watching it on their phone. They're watching it on their iPad. And when you combine the two, the number is the same, if not greater.
You can go international. We can watch it. The NBA
has proven that. My games, my broadcast of the Hawks game last night was available in probably over 200 countries.
Wow.
With streaming and League Pass and all that. So I chuckle when I hear, well, you just do a local broadcast. Okay. It's going to 200 countries around the world. That's not a local broadcast.
Exactly.
Every game that we do is a worldwide event. And the NBA is the leader in that. We are the envy of all the other sports because the baseball is pretty much just the United States and Canada, a little bit in the Pacific Rim, Japan's big baseball, but worldwide, not so much. The NFL is just this country, Canada, a little bit of Mexico, but not a whole lot. It is just a North American phenomenon. Yeah. Nowhere else in the world do they play it. Do they really watch it? Yeah. Hockey, a little more world base, but the NBA, everybody plays basketball. It is a worldwide game. And so our platform reflects that,
Exactly. NBA players were in North Korea for all the places.
Players from around the world that play in our league. It's great. And it is worldwide appeal. Second only to soccer in its international appeal.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for
you're welcome.
Sharing your thoughts, coming onto this podcast. I had so much fun, learned a lot about a new industry. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us if people want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out?
Absolutely. From the business standpoint, I'm on LinkedIn. Bob Rathbun, you can find me anywhere, just my name. But I'm on the social media platforms. Twitter is Bob Rathbun TV, same for Instagram. Those are the two main ones to reach me on. And then I'm also available through my website at bobrathbun.com if anybody would like to email me and get in touch that way. So happy to hear from fans everywhere, business associates, any questions that you might have, happy to answer them. And I appreciate the opportunity.
We'll put those links in the show notes so that people can reach out to you.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. And the best of luck. And the next time you find yourself in Atlanta, you have a standing invitation to come to a Hawks game.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. That's you just made my day. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.